चरित्रेण वधेयेन
Mataji's. No, give me warm. What to? Yes, one more. No problem. Word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Snigdha, gentle. Smita avalokena, by a glance with a sweet smile. Vacha, by words. Piyusha kalpaya, compared to nectar. Charitrena, by character. Anavadyena, without flaw. Shri, fortune. Niketena, residence. Cha, and. Atmana, by his transcendental body. Translation: He was there in his transcendental body, the residence of the goddess of fortune, with his usual gentle and sweetly smiling face, his nectarian words, and his flawless character. Purport: In the previous verse, it is described that Lord Krishna, being situated in the truths of Sankhya philosophy, is detached from all kinds of matter. In the present verse, it is described that he is the residence of the goddess of fortune. These two things are not at all contradictory. Lord Krishna is detached from the variegatedness of the inferior nature, but he is in eternal, blissful enjoyment of the spiritual nature or his internal potency. One who has a poor fund of knowledge cannot understand this distinction between the external and internal potencies. In the Bhagavad Gita, the internal potency is described as the Para Prakriti. In the Vishnu Puran also, the internal potency of Vishnu is described as Para Shakti. The Lord is never detached from the association of Parashakti. This Parashakti and her manifestations are described in the Brahma Samhita as Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bihi. The Lord is eternally joyful and cognizant in the taste derived from such transcendental bliss. Negation of the variegatedness of the inferior energy does not necessitate negation of the positive transcendental bliss of the spiritual world. Therefore, the Lord's gentleness, His smile, His character, and everything related to Him are all transcendental. Such manifestations of the internal potency are the reality, of which the material shadow is only a temporary representation from which everyone with proper knowledge must be detached. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmelitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Namayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyat Desh Tarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratushe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Giram Yat Kripa Tavaham Vande Shri Gurundina Tarinam. Hare Krishna. So before I try to speak something on this most wonderful verse, I'd like to seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas that whatever I speak, maybe it in parampara and maybe it be pleasing to the Supreme Lord, Nitai, Shishi Nitai Gaurchandra, and be pleasing to your hearts also. Okay. So this is a very beautiful verse where I will not much dwell on the background because all of y'all are quite well aware that this is a conversation that is going on between Uddhava and Vidhura, right? And at this point of time, Uddhava is remembering very fondly the pastimes of Krishna outside Vrindavan, especially in Dwarka. And there Krishna, in this particular section, he is describing Krishna. Uddhava is describing the interaction of Krishna with the queens of Dwarka. And in this particular verse, Uddhava is describing, in the previous verse, it was talked about how Krishna is detached, how Krishna is firmly situated in Sankhya, in knowledge and detachment. But in the next two verses, Krishna, an apparently seemingly contradictory nature of Krishna is being talked about. That is Krishna's interaction with the queens of Dwarka. So on one side, it is talked about how Krishna is detached. On the other side, it seems to be that Krishna seems to be very attached, because Krishna is not only having one queen, he is having 16,108 wives. How is that? Doesn't is that not a symptom of a person who's from a material conception point of view, a lusty person having so many multiple wives? So Prabhupada clarifies that very beautifully in the purport. He says Krishna is detached, at the same time is attached, but these two things are not opposites, or they are not contradictory. And there Prabhupada gives a very beautiful explanation, telling us that this is just simply a manifestation of the Lord's internal potency. Right? There is a very beautiful verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam which talks about it. When Krishna enters the palaces of Dwarka, in the inner chambers of his palace, there Shukdev Goswami says, Uddhama bhava pishuna malaval guhasa vridavaloka nihato madano piyasam samhoya chapa majahat pramado tamasta yasendriyanam vimadhitum kuhakerna sheku. So what is this beautiful verse talking about? Uddhama bhava pishuna malaval guhasa. The queens of Dwarka, their smiles, their vridavaloka, their sidelong glances is sufficient enough to even make Cupid frustrated. Kamadev will give up his bow in frustration. Seeing the beauty, that Kamadev, who is known to attract the hearts of the conditioned living entities, he will throw his bow, that I am not able to divert the queens of Dwarka from the attraction towards Krishna. Because Kamadev is Cupid who takes you away from the beauty and attraction of Krishna. But Kamadev will give up his bow in frustration. And therefore, it is said, even though the queens were so beautiful, their sidelong glances would be sufficient to agitate the senses of any person but Krishna. Yes, Indriyanam, the Indriya, the senses of Krishna could not be agitated in the presence of the queen. That is Krishna, right? So therefore, we need to understand this is Krishna's internal potency. That's why we talk about from a material conception. People think that maybe Krishna had 16,108 wives. It is just simply a manifestation of his uncontrolled lust. But no, we need to understand. Just think about it. I'll give you a few things to ponder upon. That Krishna, when people meditate, when devotees meditate upon, devotees are able to control their senses. Just imagine if a person has to meditate on a lusty person of this world, that person also gets agitated from within, because the meditation is such. But if Krishna was a lusty person, then how is it that meditating upon that Krishna, your lust gets dissipated from the heart? How is that by meditating on that Krishna, people give up material enjoyment, people renounce everything of this world and go to holy places, to dedicate their lives for the sake of the Supreme Lord? How is it that possible? How is it that possible? From that Supreme Lord, beautiful women come out. We all know, the Lord in the form of Narnayan Rishi, from him came Urvashi. But Lord, for a moment, did not get agitated. How can such a person be called as lusty? Therefore, we understand all these beautiful pastimes that Krishna enacted was just simply a manifestation of his internal potency. It was not his, he was not being under the external potency or the Maya potency. So therefore, we need to understand. So Prabhupada writes a very beautiful line in the purport where he says, yet the queens of Dwarka could not disturb the transcendental senses of the Lord. Why? Because, not in this purport, in the purport of Uddhama Bhava Pishuna Malavalguhasa, the Prabhupada writes in that purport, Krishna has two qualities. First, he is Paripurna, that is, he is all perfect. And second, he is Atmaram. Prabhupada writes in that purport, Krishna does not need anything extraneous. He does not need anything from outside in order to internally satisfy him, for his personal satisfaction. And Prabhupada clarifies there in that purport that Krishna was the feminine attractors of the queens, could not satisfy him. But what satisfied him was the sincere and affectionate service that was offered by the Dwarka queens towards Krishna. That is what satisfied Krishna. That is what attracted Krishna towards the queens of Dwarka. So Prabhupada clarifies them. Now, when Krishna exhibits these qualities, even the devotees, those who meditate upon Krishna, also automatically reflect these qualities of detachment, from this material world. Etad ishanam ishasya prakriti stopi tad gunehi na yujyate sad atmastair. Actually, if you take the literal meaning of this verse, it is actually saying etad ishanam ishasya. The divine opulence of Krishna is what? Prakriti stopi tad gunehi. Even though he is situated within the material nature, na yujyate, he is not affected by the material modes of nature. But Prabhupada's translations are very purportic. Even within Prabhupada's translation, Prabhupada gives an additional understanding. He says, just like the Lord is above material nature, in a very similar manner, Prabhupada writes in that translation, even the devotees who take shelter of the Supreme Lord also exhibit this detachment. And we see devotees across Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita exhibit such detachment. We have one example, from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Raghunath Das Goswami. When the entire pastime of Haridas Thakur takes place, of delivering the prostitute, Haridas Thakur then comes to Chandrapur, which is not the one in Maharashtra, the one in Bangladesh, right, in East Bengal. There, he resides there, and Balaram Acharya and Yadunandan Acharya, who are the two family priests of Raghunath Das Goswami, who was at that point of time a child, they would regularly take Raghunath Das to Haridas Thakur. And due to constant association and hearing from Haridas Thakur for a prolonged period of time, therein developed detachment and a spirit of renunciation within the heart of Raghunath Das Goswami. So therefore, as devotees, we don't take much inspiration from Lord's detachment. But where does our actual inspiration comes? From the detachment that is exhibited by the devotees of the Lord. That is what is more important. See, we need to understand detachment is more important than renunciation. There is a difference between the two words. We have restrain. No, restrain means regulated interaction with sense objects. Renunciation means giving up the sense object altogether. So these two terminologies are used in a physical sense, where you're giving up the sense object. But detachment means there is lack of emotional investment in that sense object. Right? You're understanding the difference? Renunciation and detachment. So therefore, we see Ambrish Maharaj, Suteshu, he had wife. He had children. Dareshu, he had a beautiful wife. He had Bandhushu, he had relatives. Swandana, he had chariots. Dvipa Uttama, he had the best of the elephants. Vaji, horses. Vastushu, he had opulence. He was surrounded by opulences. Akshaya Ratna, he had unlimited jewels. Ambara, dresses. Abharana, ornaments. But what was the beauty of Ambrish Maharaj? The beauty of Ambrish Maharaj was that even though he was surrounded by such opulences, Shukdev Goswami says that his mati was towards, detachment. Even though senses was coming in sense objects, from that contact there were emotions, but there was no identification with those emotions that were arising from that contact of the senses with the sense objects. So therefore, that is what is detachment. That is what Ambrish Maharaj, even though externally he may not have been renounced, but internally he was detached. So therefore, this question is asked, who was more renounced? Ambrish Maharaj or Durvasa Muni? Durvasa Muni was externally, living in caves, in forest, dwelling not within a palace, but internally he was attached to his post, position, to his opinions. But Ambrish Maharaj, he exhibited true renunciation. Because, His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj very often says, renunciation means not depriving your body of the comforts of the life. But true renunciation means renunciation of the false ego. Right? And therefore we see Raghunath Das Goswami, along with that spirit of renunciation, he had most importantly that spirit of detachment. And therefore, even mother of Raghunath Das, he says, Putra Batula Haila. My son has gone mad. And therefore, what did she suggest to the husband? That you should bind him with ropes. Husband gets frustrated, says, you foolish woman. Don't you know? Indra Aishwarya Sama, Stri Apsara Sama. What does Raghunath Das Goswami, what does our son Raghunath Das do not have? He has opulence which is as equivalent to that of the opulence of Indra. He has a wife who is as beautiful that of the damsels in heavens. If that could not bind him to the material world, then what will ropes bind him? And therefore the conclusion of the father was, Chaitanya Chandera Kripa Hayecha Ihare. Chaitanya Chandrera Batul Ke Rakite Pare. He has become a recipient of the mercy of Chaitanya Chandra. And therefore, anyone who becomes a recipient of the mercy of Chaitanya Chandra, he becomes a madman. He becomes Batul of who? Chaitanya Chandra. Chaitanya Chandrera Batul Ke Rakite Pare. Who can keep such a madman of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? So therefore we understand what to talk about Chaitanya, what to talk about Ambrish Maharaj, Raghunath Das Goswami. Even our Srila Prabhupada. Let us try to analyze. If you talk, we're not talking about Prabhupada's, from a spiritual point of view. Talk from a material point of view. What all Prabhupada accomplished. Prabhupada, in his very lifetime, he wrote 80 volumes of Vedic literatures. 80 volumes of books. Big thing for an author in an entire lifetime to write 80 books. Then Prabhupada created 2 companies, institutes. What? ISKCON. Had how many branches in the world? 108 branches. BPT created 4 to 5 branches of BPT all over the world. And today BPT is known as the biggest institute for publishing transcendental Vedic literatures. That was the second achievement. What other achievements Prabhupada had? Prabhupada had 10,000 followers to whom he was not paying a single penny. Pandit, whomever, he had one British soldier whom he would take around everywhere. And he would pay him thousands and thousands of pounds. And he would show off to everyone. Just see, I have a British soldier. And Prabhupada had how many Britishers under him? How many Americans under him? So many. And to them, he was not paying even 1 rupee. And making them accomplish big, big things in the service of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Prabhupada established farm communities, restaurants, Rath Yatras. We're not talking about spiritual. Just analyze from a material point of view. Prabhupada was materially also very, very successful. But that same Prabhupada, when he was asked at the last few days of his life, so, Prabhupada, do you have any last desire? What did Prabhupada say? Kuch ichha nahi. I don't have any desire. So you see, this, our founder Acharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is the pinnacle, is the crest jewel of such detachment. Right? So therefore, the Lord also exhibits that detachment, And the devotees who meditate upon that Supreme Lord are also supremely detached. So, therefore, uh, this is very, very important. So, therefore, as sadhakas, it is important in order to cultivate, in order to inculcate or imbibe that quality of detachment even in our hearts, we need to meditate upon the eternal, that is Krishna. And in this verse, there are three things that are being talked about. What are the three things? One is the smiling face of the Lord, one is the nectarian words of the Lord, and one is the flawless character. We should become as sadhakas attached. Now, when these three words are being talked about in this particular verse, it is being talked from a viewpoint of Madhurya Ras. But we are not Madhurya Rasik Bhaktas. We are Vaidhi Sadhakas. So therefore, we need to understand from a Vaidhi Sadhak point of view, how does this verse is applicable for us? So for us, the smiling face of the Lord is taking darshan of the Supreme Lord. Every day we have the opulence of taking darshan of Shri Shri Nitai Gaurachandra. And therefore, we should stand in front of Nitai Gaurachandra for a long time and take darshan of his supreme smile. Because the Srimad Bhagavatam says, Hasam harer avanatakila lokativa shok ashru sagara vishoshanam atyudharam. A yogi, when he meditates upon the supremely smiling face of the Lord, what is the effect? Hasam harer avanatakila lokativa shok ashru sagar. Everyone in this world have an ocean of tears. That ocean of tears, tears of broken love, tears of frustration, of repeated frustration, tears of misery in this world. Everyone in this world, if you analyze, have their own ocean of tears. But when a person who simply meditates upon the smile of the Supreme Lord, all that shok ashru sagara vishoshanam atyudharam, that collection of all those tears from which an ocean is manifested, there that ocean is automatically dried up when one takes darshan, when one meditates upon the supremely smiling face of the Lord. In the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when the entire Brahma Vimohan pastime takes place, Krishna manifests in the form of, when Lord Brahma thinks, let me try to see what is happening on earth. What is Krishna must be doing at this point of time? Is he frustrated? Is he looking out for his friend? He comes down. And as soon as he sees Krishna playing with all his cowherd boys and cowherd boys, Brahma is bewildered. What is happening? And at that point of time, Krishna manifests in the form of multiple Vishnus. And there the beautiful features of Vishnu are talked about. And there it is said, the smiling face of Vishnu, the smiling face and the sidelong glances of Vishnu, it creates spiritual desires, and not only it creates spiritual desires, it protects those spiritual desires. And Prabhupada writes a very beautiful statement in that purport. I will read that statement out. Prabhupada writes, it was like such an amazing statement. Prabhupada writes, in Vrindavan, there is a place where there was no temple, but a devotee desired, let there be a temple, let there be seva. Therefore, what was once an empty corner has now become a place of pilgrimage. Such are the desires of a devotee. And Prabhupada is talking about whom? Prabhupada is talking about himself in all humility. That how Prabhupada was a recipient of the smile and the sidelong glances of the Supreme Lord. Because that created spiritual desire within Prabhupada. And as a result of that desire of Prabhupada, the Krishna Balram Mandir was manifested. And not only when you continue taking the darshan and meditating upon the smile and the sidelong glances of the Supreme Lord, not only the Lord creates, but He also protects those desires, maintains those desires, right? So this is a very important, lesson for us. Therefore, the concept of darshan is very important. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's understanding is very revolutionary. Now, normally we say, to devotees, Prabhu, I am going and taking darshan. But let us imagine if Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was here and you would tell him the same statement, he would chastise you. Because according to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said, what can you take darshan? You say you can take darshan of the deities. Rather, the Supreme Lord, when we appear in front of him, he sees us. What qualification do we have with our eyes made of water and flesh take darshan of that Supreme Lord? We cannot take darshan, right? And therefore, Prabhupada, once Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur was in the Chaitanya Mat and he was taking darshan of Giridhari Gandharvika, and one of his disciples was accompanying him, and the disciple told Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur, Guru Maharaj, you have not brought your spectacles, and therefore as a result you may not be able to take darshan properly. Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur smiled at that disciple and said, we should not think the Supreme Lord as the object of our vision. We should meditate on how we can acquire some qualification to become worthy objects of his vision. This was Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur's understanding. Once Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur was in Jagannath Puri temple, and whenever Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would take darshan of Jagannath ji, his place was fixed. Where would he stand? He would stand always besides Garud stump. And disciples would tell, why don't you go ahead and take nice darshan of Jagannath ji? He said, no. What qualification do I have? If Jagannath ji will surely bestow his glance upon Garud ji, and if by chance, if accidentally that glance may fall upon such a soul like me, then there is some hope for me, right? So whenever we also take darshan, we should always stand behind some advanced devotee, right? And take darshan. Because surely Lord's glance will fall upon that advanced devotee. And some mercy, drops of mercy may fall upon us also. This is the vision of taking darshan of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, now one may ask, can I take darshan? Can the darshan of the Lord, can the beauty of the Lord be taken, by my endeavors? No, not by our endeavors. Sometimes we when we go to various ISKCON temples, we see how the deities are so beautifully dressed, and many a times, at a very neophyte stage, we normally comment, oh, what beautiful pagdi, what beautiful ornaments are beautifying the Lord. But actually, it is not the ornaments who are beautifying the Lord. The Lord is beautifying the ornaments. This is what is the understanding. Because in the Bhagavatam, it is told the Lord is Padam Padam, Param Padam Padam, Bhusha Bhushanangam. The Lord is known as the ornament of all ornaments. He is the ornament of all ornaments. So therefore, we cannot understand, we cannot see or take darshan of the Lord's beauty. For that, it requires mercy of the devotees. And therefore, there is a very beautiful story that comes in South India, the story of Dhanurdas. Dhanurdas had once become, the procession of the Supreme Lord was going on, and there Dhanurdas, instead of taking darshan of the Lord in the procession and participating in the procession, rather he was constantly taking darshan of the eyes of one beautiful girl. Constantly. And the Ramanujacharya was there, and he was saying, what kind of person is he? The Lord's procession is going on, devotees are, participating, but this person, Dhanurdas, is taking darshan of this girl. And Ramanujacharya approached that personality, Dhanurdas, and told him, the Lord's procession is going on. Don't you understand the seriousness of this? What is attracting you so much of this girl that you are ready to even ignore the Lord's procession? Dhanurdas confessed, O Ramanujacharya, the beauty of the eyes of this girl totally enamors me. So therefore, I am I think in this world, there is nothing more beautiful than the eyes of this girl. Ramanujacharya challenged him. He said, if I show you something more beautiful than this, will you leave it? He said, yes. If you show me a pair of eyes more beautiful than this, then at this very point, I will become your servant. Ramanujacharya then went to Ranganathji, prayed that, dear Lord, kindly reveal your beauty. And when Dhanudas took the darshan of Ranganath Swami, there he was totally, flat, totally mesmerized, totally enamored by the beautiful eyes of Ranganathji. And from that point, he became a disciple of Ramanujacharya. So we need to understand the beauty of the Lord is revealed by the mercy of the devotees. Once Gopal, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, he took darshan of Kunji Bihari, and he made a comment to His Grace Radhesham Prabhu. Since we're discussing about the smile, he said, oh, Kunji Bihari's smile seems to be widened. Now, if you and me make such a comment, people will think this guy is crazy. Who are we to understand the Lord's smile? But when pure devotees of the Supreme Lord, because of sincere service, because of sincere adherence to the instruction of the spiritual master bestows the mercy upon the living entity, and as a result, the Lord reveals himself to the living entity. So therefore that is very, very, important. So on one hand, we have Krishna's smile, but our problem is, more than becoming attracted by Krishna's smile, we become attracted by Maya's smile. That is our problem, Krishna's smile is also very enchanting. Maya's smile is also very enchanting. But the problem with Maya's smile is, it is enslaving. It enslaves us. Maya's smile is alluring. It is tempting. It is filled with promises. It is seducing. It seduces you. But we need to understand, Maya's smile is like a mirage. The more closer you go to a mirage, it vanishes. But Krishna's smile is like that sun which dissipates all the darkness. Krishna's smile is like that fountain which gives us eternal hope. Krishna's smile is like that touch which heals without words. That is Krishna's smile. So therefore it is important, when we go in front of the deities, we take long darshan of the, of the Supreme Lord, right? So therefore, Maya's smile. So recently, His Grace Kanai Thakur Prabhu gave a very wonderful class where, he was describing the E curve. I don't know how many of you have attended that class, You, okay. I think it was not broadcasted live for the yoga devotees, but you heard it. Okay. But I will repeat it for the, for my enlightenment, to remind myself, the Maya's E curve. So what does Maya do? When we meditate upon Maya's smile, what are the 9 E's Kanai Prabhu recently shared? So the first E that happens when we meditate upon not Krishna's smile, Maya's smile, first thing what she does is enchantment. She enchants us. Second, when we become enchanted, then there is expectation. Then there is, with that enchantment that Maya creates, there is an expectation that one starts creating fantasies. Oh, that interaction that I had with Maya. Now for every person, Maya is different, right? So you can, according to the person, you can apply that in your very own life. So after enchantment, there is an expectation that yes, Maya will give me. And then what does Maya create? Excitement. Just before the altar opens, all devotees are standing in anticipation, in excitement. Today, how the Lord is going to be beautified, how it is going to be dressed. That anticipation is there. That is anticipation in taking Krishna's darshan. But this is the anticipation that Maya creates, the excitement. Oh, how is Maya going to present herself now? That is the third E. Then the fourth E is, then you want to engage. Then there is engagement with Maya. And when you involve yourself with Maya, then there is enslavement. And when we become enslaved by Maya, then then we understand this interaction with Maya is very dry, is not giving me the pleasure, right? And that leads to exhaustion. And then exhaustion, and then when we are exposed to people outside, that how we have become fallen a victim of Maya, it creates embarrassment for us. And as a result, we become embarrassed, then we become also entangled. How can I face the society? What will devotees talk about me? What will people talk about me? And therefore we feel, instead of taking more shelter, maybe I should go to Maya more itself. And as a result, a devotee may become even more entangled. So therefore, how can we escape? When we get enlightened. When we become enlightened. Especially, we already talked about the smile of the Lord. When we become enlightened by the nectarian words. And for Vaidhi sadhakas, what are the nectarian words of Krishna? In the form of the Bhagavad Gita. The nectarian words that Krishna has spoken in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. Because it is Malline Mochanam Pumsam Jalasnanam Dine Dine Sakrid Gita Amrita Snanam Samsara Malanashanam. When you meditate Gita Dhyana Shilasya Pranayam Parasya Shoka Bhaya Varjitadi. I'm forgetting that there's a verse in Gita Mahatmya which talks about anyone who reads the Bhagavad Gita, anyone who meditates upon the instructions of the Supreme Lord in the Bhagavad Gita, what happens as a result of that? Vishnum avapnoti. I'm forgetting the verse if anyone remembers. Vishnum padam avapnoti. One attains the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, and the second benefit is bhaya shoka varjitadi. Varjitadi adiyah. One becomes free from bhaya and shoka. And in this one, maline mochanam pumsam jalasnanam dine dine. Everyone, before coming, we take a bath. But Gita Mahatmya, Shankaracharya says, we should regularly bathe ourselves. Sakrit Gita Amrita Snanam. We should bathe ourselves with the nectar of the Bhagavad Gita, the nectarian words of Krishna. And when we do that, what happens as a result? Samsara mal nashanam. The dirt that is accumulated as a result of constant interaction with this material world gets totally wiped off, gets totally dissipated. So therefore, we should constantly, read the Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, there's one point that I wanted to say before we go into nectarian words is, how do we know that Krishna is smiling upon us? That is also, that there should be an indication. Now, Nitai Gaurachandra is smiling, no doubt about it. But how do we know that Nitai Gaurachandra is, when Krishna smiles, that means, that means Krishna is pleased upon us, right? This is one indication, right? But how do we understand that Krishna is smiling upon us? Or rather, how do we understand that Krishna is pleased upon us? When our superiors are pleased upon us. When our superiors are pleased upon us by the seva that we have rendered, then understand that is an indication that Krishna is pleased upon us. Krishna is smiling upon us. And how do we know? They bestow us with mercy. And that mercy comes in the form of more seva. That's what we should understand. When Krishna is smiling upon us, when superiors are smiling upon us, that means they are pleased upon us, they bestow mercy. And we should understand when the indication is that we are getting more seva. Because when we get more seva, we take more anxiety of Krishna. And when we take more anxiety of Krishna, the time for Maya automatically reduces. And that is what is the aim of spiritual life, right? To maximize Krishna time, minimize Maya time. So when we take more anxiety for Krishna in terms of
rendering service and when our superiors give us more seva, understand Krishna is smiling upon me. This is the indication, right? So therefore, this we need to understand. And I just have 5 minutes. And then finally, concluding, Krishna's flawless character. Now, for devotees, we don't take much inspiration from Krishna. To be honest, rather we take more inspiration from the devotees of Krishna. And therefore, Krishna is so merciful. Krishna understands that. And therefore, that same Krishna, taking the mode of Srimati Radharani, comes in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself has set the standards of detachment, the standards of renunciation. Apani Achara Prabhu Jevara Shikhai. Mahaprabhu came to exhibit what is true renunciation, what is true detachment from this material world. And therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshartam Eka Purusha Purana. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to do what? To teach us this Vairagya Vidya. And how? By the exhibition of his own devotional service. Nija Bhakti Yoga. Shikshartam Eka Purusha Purana. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shariradhari. And therefore that same Krishna comes in the form of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Kripam Buddhi Yastvam Aham Prapadde. So this is a very beautiful verse by Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. So it is 7:41. I will just take 2-3 minutes to summarize, right? So today we discussed Krishna's, how did we begin? Yeah. So we talked about how, in the previous verse, Krishna is detached, at the same time attached. Now these seem to be apparently contradictory qualities, but Srila Prabhupada clarifies in the purport, the pastimes that Krishna exhibits is a result of his internal potency, and therefore we understand this pastimes of Krishna with the queens of Dwarka is not a manifestation of this lust, because we analyzed that how when devotees, conditioned souls also who meditate upon the Supreme Lord, their lust evaporates, then how can Krishna be lusty, right? That was the first point that we talked about. Second point that we talked about is how if Krishna is detached, one who meditates upon Krishna, they also imbibe that spirit of detachment. And we discussed about 2 examples of Raghunath Das Goswami, Ambrish Maharaj, and of course our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, how they also developed this quality of detachment because of their constant meditation of the Supreme Lord. And then for sadhakas to be able to develop the detachment, we need to attach ourselves to 3 things, that is the smiling face of the Lord, the nectarian words of the Lord, and the flawless character. And in smiling face of the Lord, we discussed how when we meditate upon the smiling face of the Lord, Hasam Hare Ramana Takila Loka Tivra, the ocean of tears that all of us have accumulated over lifetimes and lifetimes, that dries up. The second benefit is when you meditate upon the Lord's smile and sidelong glances, then as a result, what happens? Spiritual desires are created from within, and not only desires are created, but Krishna takes the responsibility of protecting those desires. And we see the example of Prabhupada, how he quotes his example of how how a devotee desired that let there be a land, a temple in Vrindavan. As a result, the Krishna Balram Mandir was manifested. And then we talked about the concept of darshan. When we say taking darshan, it actually means let Krishna not be the object of our vision. Rather, let us qualify ourselves so that we become qualified objects of Krishna's vision. That is what is the true understanding of darshan. And then we talked about how do we understand that Krishna is smiling upon us. Krishna is smiling upon us when our superiors are smiling upon us, when they are pleased with us by our service. And how do they bestow mercy? By giving us more service. Because that more seva is what will increase our anxiety for Krishna and as a result minimize our time for Maya. And then secondly, we talked about Krishna's nectarian words in the form of the Gita, which we should read. And third, Krishna's flawless character when he comes in the form of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Shrimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.